Hello and welcome to another live stream. What is going on? My name is Matt O'Leary. Today I have a very special guest. I am joined by Joey Richards of Let's Talk Broncos podcast. Joey, how are you today?
I'm doing great, man. I'm excited to be on. I'm excited to preview some Jets Broncos. I don't know if this is like a big national game, but hey, excited, excited nonetheless. Excited nonetheless.
Absolutely excited for both of us. And I got to start here because this kind of was a storyline even before the season started. So Sean Payton's comments.
Yeah.
Why put a target on his back after not coaching a game? I just want you to, Joe, you seem like a nice guy. We've talked before,
Right.
getting on here. I now want nothing more than to beat the bricks off the Broncos this week because of his comments. A team that I really had no ill will against. They don't bother me. They're in the AFC West. We play them a couple times, every other year we seem to
Yeah.
play. I now hate the Denver Broncos because of these comments.
Hey, man. Well, that's reciprocated. I'll say that right now. We don't like Nathaniel Hackett down here. We do not like Nathaniel Hackett. Why he said that? I don't know. You hear these other coaches come out and they're talking about, it's coach's code. You would never say that about somebody. It's coach's code. I say screw all that. It was a good thing for Broncos country, at least. I understand how you guys feel in New York about your Jets, but we didn't like Nathaniel Hackett, so we liked hearing it. We liked it.
No, totally fair. Listen, I will fully admit, not a great tenure in Denver for our guy Nate Hackett, and off to a bumpy start as OC. He had a nice game plan last week, so we'll give him some credit for week 4. But it seems like there's a little something extra now with this game from those comments before. But even before we get into this, you mentioned not like Nathaniel Hackett obviously didn't make it through the season even as head coach. What do you think the biggest issues were for him in Denver?
I thought his biggest issues were, as a head coach, you have to instill some discipline in your team or just kind of be tough sometimes. And that was the biggest issue with Nathaniel Hackett was there were reports. Melvin Gordon, he fumbled almost every single time he touched the ball, it felt like, in Denver. They benched him finally after 4 or 5 fumbles. They ended up benching Melvin Gordon. It came out Melvin Gordon had a talk with Nathaniel Hackett. Next week, he was starting again. Or Russell Wilson. He had his own office in the building. He wasn't really with the team. You need a coach to be able to put their foot down. I don't have any doubts that Nathaniel Hackett could be a good offensive coordinator. I think he's kind of proven that he can be a good offensive coordinator. Just a head coach of a football team, I'm not so sure. The players in Denver were kind of walking all over him, it felt like at times.
That's totally fair. Some guys are just more cut out for a coordinator. You see it on both sides of the ball, offense, defensive guy. They get their they get their shot rather at HC, and it just doesn't work out. But
yeah,
as for the 2023 Denver Broncos team, I think one of the bigger stories is the defensive struggles on this team. Obviously, the game against Miami stands out, but that's not the only one. 35 points to the Commanders. Justin Fields has a pretty good day this past week, and then Broncos come back and win that one, obviously. But what do you think are the biggest reasons for this really slow start and really, sorry to say, poor start for the Broncos defense?
Yeah, no, I think there was going to always be natural regression from last year. They lost some players like Draymond Jones comes to the top of your mind as a big ticket free agent that the Broncos didn't go after. Ronald Darby is a DB who played a lot for the Broncos and he was really good. He left. So you're replacing these other players, and the Russell Wilson contract makes it tough to go out there and splurge in free agency, spend how exactly like you want an NFL team to spend. So that has been an issue, but the major thing is Vance Joseph. They brought him here. He's a former head coach of the Broncos, a lot like Nathaniel Hackett. Brought him in as defensive coordinator. It's gone really bad. It feels like Sean Payton always has wanted somebody to run the Vic Fangio scheme. So Vance Joseph is down here running a system that he's never run before. That's an issue. I don't even understand why he took the job. It sounds a lot like the DB coach Christian Parker is giving him pointers on what to do on the defense and stuff like that. Or at least that's what's coming out of Denver. But like you mentioned, the Miami Dolphins game, the Broncos gave up 70 plus. These players on the field are still NFL guys. They're still NFL players. You can't give up 70. So I think regression was always definitely going to be part of it. But defensive coordinator and what the defensive coordinator is asked to do has been massive issues. So I do think that the Jets should have a pretty good offensive day against the Broncos defense. I really do. I mean, Justin Fields didn't throw an incompletion up until the second half of that game. He had the most passing yards ever in his career with 335. Zach Wilson could do the same thing. I don't see why not.
Yeah, and someone else I wanted to ask you, I guess, a more positive on that defense is obviously Patrick Surtain, one of the best young corners in the game. Do you foresee him? Do you think he follows Garrett Wilson around, or do they do that? He's going to stick on one side of the field, corner 2 is going to stick on the other side of the field, and let's just run our defense like that.
So in week 1 against the Vegas Raiders, he followed Devontae Adams around, but he hasn't followed any receiver around since. And we even got times of that last season where he followed DK Metcalf around for the entire game. So it's possible. I doubt it, though. I don't think so. I think the Broncos are going to put him on a side because, I mean, Miami, they scored 70 on the Broncos. Like I said earlier, they didn't have Surtain follow Tyreek Hill around, and Waddle was out for that game, for those that don't remember. So I don't think that they will. Definitely one of the better cornerbacks in football, though. Another reason why it's personal between the Jets and Broncos, a lot of debate on who's the better cornerback there between Sauce and Pat Surtain.
Yeah, listen, I'm in the camp of why can't we just enjoy both? I think they are both fantastic corners. Really, really excited to see that matchup and to see if he does get some reps against Garrett Wilson. But that's really surprising to hear, especially like if you're down that big and you're getting beat, wouldn't you think, like, logically, wouldn't you want to put your best player against the opposing team's best player? Like, the Jets don't really do that either. Like, they keep Sauce Gardner on one side, DJ Reed on the other side. And right. I get it. Like, it's worked for them a lot, but in a game when you're down, for instance, for the Jets, they were down pretty big against Dallas and they still refused to put Sauce Gardner on CeeDee Lamb, who was cooking them up. So, like, I question the logic with that one sometimes.
Oh, without question. I mean, I definitely do too. It makes sense. If you have one of those elite cornerbacks, you should be able to use them to the max. Make sure their presence is known. And following them on the best wide receiver, if you think that he can cover him, shut him down, slow him down even, that's definitely the best way. Like, how many snaps I had to watch Pat Surtain cover Chosen Anderson or River Craycraft in that game were absurd. They're not going to throw it to him. We're good. Go put him on Tyreek Hill, please.
Absolutely. As for Russell Wilson in the offense, it looks like Russell Wilson's had a much better start this year than where he was last year. Wanted to gauge your confidence in him for the rest of this season and going forward as the Broncos quarterback.
No, I feel pretty confident in Russ, and I think the main reason why is Sean Payton. It kind of just shows the importance of coaching, right? Like last year, Russ looked horrendous. It really looked like he didn't know what he was looking at on the field. When you go back and watch the film, his eyes all over the place, not knowing where his first read even is on some plays, where he's supposed to go after that. He didn't know. He looked confused. Going into this season, Russ looks a ton better, and I do have confidence in him. And I think a lot of the reason is because of Sean Payton. I'm curious with you. Do you feel the same way with Zach Wilson and Nathaniel Hackett? Do you think he's maximizing Zach Wilson?
So up until this past week against Kansas City, I was going to say no, but then Zach Wilson goes out there with his back against the wall and has legitimately, like, without, not hyperbole, his best game as a pro. It's like, well, yeah, what version of Zach are we getting now going forward? Like, is this the new norm? Can he go out there and give you 245 and 2 touchdowns every week with no turnovers? That would be, fantastic if that were the case. But, just the week prior against New England, he was throwing for, $150 and completing 50% of his passes. So, like, it's just the big variance. So, the vibe here in New York and with Jet fans is there's a little bit of a confidence just because of the performance that we just saw. And then, as you mentioned, some of these things with the Broncos defense, like, it's not just Tua and that elite offense tearing up. Like, Sam Howell had a great game against them. Justin Fields, who really struggles passing, has a great game against this Denver defense. So fans are hoping that he replicates what he did against Kansas City this week.
Yeah, no, and I could definitely see it for all the reasons you mentioned. I'm curious though how much of like just how personal it is between the two teams. Like you guys have the head coach who the Broncos just fired. I'm sure he's going to come out guns blazing. If he doesn't have his script already put together, I'm sure he does. I wouldn't be shocked to see like a flea flicker or something out of ordinary happen first drive.
Yeah, I feel like you have to take a shot, and it's not just the passing attack. Like the rushing attacks have done fairly well against that Broncos defense as well. But
Totally.
I would absolutely think that early on in this game, you're going to want to test this defense, take a shot down the field, see if you connect something. Like you said, a flea flicker. They tried it against Kansas City. Unfortunately, the offensive line didn't hold up, and Wilson had to throw it away. But Lazard was open. If he had an extra second, it would have worked. But I would absolutely think that he's in his bag this week, which I'm not going to lie to you, would be pretty fun to watch, this offense, be unleashed, because more often than not, as I mentioned, we're seeing a lot more 50% completion, 150-yard passing performances than we are of seeing this guy go over 250 passing yards. So it'd be nice to see that for a change.
Yeah, no, most definitely. I agree. And like I said, I think it could happen against this Broncos defense. They're just not very great. Now I will say though, they are getting some players back. There's a lot of players that were taken off the PUP list. Justin Simmons being one of the better safeties in football. Like for the majority of these weeks now, I mean, we could go down the Broncos safety depth chart. Caden Stearns, IR. That was the guy that was supposed to step in. Justin Simmons down. They've had the PJ lockdown. They're down to their sixth safety out there. So it's been really tough in that aspect. And the nose tackles coming back. There are getting reinforcements this next week. Is it enough? They're probably still not a great defense, but maybe a little more fight from the Broncos.
Okay. Yeah, definitely something to keep an eye on for this one. I wanted to ask you about the Broncos wide receiver core, because it seems like they have a pretty solid wide receiver core, but for whatever reason, like what's going on with Jerry Jeudy? Like this is a player that I loved coming out of the draft, and like he's had some nice moments, but for whatever reason, it like hasn't clicked. And he's like, oh yeah, that's definitely like a wide receiver one. Is it more on him? Is it on the Broncos? What's the vibe there?
It's probably a mix of both, because I do agree with you. He's extremely talented. He's open a lot. There's no question. But is he ever going to be one of those guys that, he's going to go down the field 50-50 high point the football? That's just not his game. And Russell Wilson's always had a big issue, even going back to Seattle days. He's not very great at throwing over the middle of the field. He likes throwing outside the numbers or deep down the field. Where does Jerry Jeudy win? He's a route runner. He likes breaking ankles. He's going towards the middle of the field. And it just seems like there's a little disconnect there. Is Jerry Jeudy talented? Extremely. Does he really mesh with this Broncos offense? Probably not. I mean, to be honest with you, I'm going to be absolutely shocked if one of Jerry Jeudy or Cortland Sutton aren't traded at the trade deadline. I just think the Broncos are in that boat. You already see rumors with it. I do think it's going to happen.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Like, he kind of feels like a guy who might benefit from a fresh start. And, if this, start of the season continues for Denver, why not get draft capital for the future, at the deadline? I think that, could be a wise decision for both sides.
Oh, without question. And you know what? I do think Jerry Jeudy could go to another team and be a really good football player. Is he ever going to be that wide receiver one that people want him to be? Is he ever going to be the Broncos' Garrett Wilson? Probably not. I don't think he's ever going to be that guy. But is he a contributor? He's really good. And yeah, a guy that the Jets should definitely at least be game planning for, because if he gets the ball in his hands, he's really good after the catch as well. It's just about finding him and getting him the ball.
Absolutely. And I want to go back to the Jets offensive side of the ball for a little bit here. We mentioned, Zach Wilson a lot is going to be a storyline to keep a close eye on for how he performs. Now, we know the numbers. They're not good for this Denver defense. But if you were trying to scheme up an offense, what's an area that you would look to attack this Denver Broncos defense? Is like the specific spot or specific thing that they tend to struggle with more than other things?
Okay, so in the secondary, I think they're plenty talented, especially with Justin Simmons coming back. You have one of the better safeties in football, and you have one of the better cornerbacks in football, and Patrick Surtain. Where they really struggle is that defensive front. They just cut Randy Gregory this last week, or I think it was yesterday. They cut Randy Gregory yesterday,
Yep.
and so it's really weak up there. And I'm not just talking about the edges. I'm not talking about the interior defensive line as a whole. That unit really is struggling. It really is. They're not going to be able to generate much pass rush. The guys that they do have at edge are strictly pass rushers, at least. They're not going out there and defending the run. You have Nick Benito, extremely undersized. He got the starting job now, but he's 6'3", 240. And then you have Jonathan Cooper. His big thing is, yeah, he's pretty good, but he's more of a role player type on a good team. Then across the interior defensive line, the Broncos haven't been able to stop any running back outside of the Raiders' running game outside of the Raiders week 1. It's been an issue. The Dolphins, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but I think they ran for like 300 yards against the Broncos.
Good Lord.
Yeah, it was crazy. The guy that had third on their rushing list had 70-something yards. It was really, really bad. So I think definitely the running. And Josie Jewell, linebacker, out as well. They have a rookie in there at linebacker. I would say, and I think that benefits you guys, probably not wanting to lean on Zach Wilson all the way. Dalvin Cook, Breece Hall, and your running backs. Michael Carter should be able to get a lot of rushing yards going against the Broncos.
Yeah, so that's kind of where I wanted to go next with Breece Hall. So Robert Saleh said earlier this week they're kind of taking the training wheels off with him now. They've been limiting him a little bit through the first 4 weeks, and this is actually the place where he got hurt last year. He tore his ACL on the field in Denver last year. So, I'm sure he's got to be, motivated going back to the place where his rookie season was cut short. But this kind of feels like the spot for Breece to have that really big game. He had a nice game in week 1 against Buffalo, had popped off a couple big runs. He had a nice long run in the game against Kansas City. But from a consistency standpoint, I feel like this is a time where we're going to see him get 15 touches in this game and have some success.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good opportunity for him to have success. If they're taking the training wheels off of him this next week, I mean, I would say start Breece Hall in your fantasy lineups, guys. That's what I would say. So, yeah, I think he is. And he's an extremely talented running back. I forgot that it was in Denver last year where he did tear his ACL ultimately. And he was going crazy in that game as well. Extremely talented running back. So, yeah, I would say Breece Hall. Yeah, he's going to have a big game if they are taking the training wheels off of him.
Absolutely. We're talking to Joey Richards of Let's Talk Broncos podcast. If you're watching the program and have a question, you could drop it in the chat. We'll get to those as we go. I want to get into just key matchups. Like, what are you looking for in this game where it's like, all right, this is a positional group that I would be looking to attack, or this is one that I'm worried about on either the offensive or defensive side of the football?
Yeah, I mean, the Broncos are struggling so much. I'll be honest that it's turning into, hey, I'm watching Pat Surtain every time. That's what I'm trying to do. So I want to see Pat Surtain versus Garrett Wilson. The more the merrier. I hope he does follow him around because that's just a fun matchup. I would love to see it. I think that there are some type of wide receivers that give Surtain more trouble than others. If you're a Tyreek Hill, he's going to probably struggle a little more. If you're a DK Metcalf, he's probably going to do a lot better. So I don't know. Garrett Wilson kind of feels like he's in between both those guys. It'll be interesting, but that's a matchup I'm excited to watch for at least.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, from my perspective, it's someone that we just talked about in Breece Hall. Just because, again, kind of returning to the place where the injury happened. This is a Broncos defense that has struggled against the run. He hasn't had that true big dominant game yet. And while I want to see Zach rip it, like he did that a little bit against Kansas City this past week, and it would be awesome to see like a 300-yard, 3-touchdown performance. If Breece goes out there and gets his confidence back, I think that would be a really big step for not only him, but just for the team in general.
Yeah. I'll give one more as well.
Sure.
You guys have a really good interior defensive line with Quinnen Williams. The Broncos went out and spent a lot of money on Ben Powers, and then Lloyd Cushenberry, their center's having a kind of a career year. And then Quinn Miners, who is a guy we drafted. I want to see how they hold up against him. From a Broncos fan's perspective,
Sure.
that's something that I really am looking forward to in this game. I think it's one of the better Bronco offensive lines they've had in some years. Is it an elite offensive line? No. Other Broncos offensive lines have been really, really bad. So I want to see against the elite talent, how do they hold up? Because they did struggle a little in that Washington game where, they have guys all over the place in that D line.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the strengths of this Jets football team is we know the defense in general, but that defensive line and specifically on the interior, Quinnen Williams is someone who could wreck a game. But even beyond that, Quentin Jefferson's a free agent that they brought in. He already has 3 sacks from the interior as well. They're a deep defensive line. It's not just, they're 4 guys that they keep out there 80% of the snaps. They rotate these guys heavy. So yeah, there's like 9 guys in this defensive line rotation. So we're gonna see a lot of different faces going after it, and keeping them fresh is a big part of the reason why there's so much success there.
Can I flip this question on you and ask, like, as a Broncos fan, like, I'm curious, where are the Jets the weakest on defense, do you think?
Yeah, so on defense, I would probably say safety would be their weakest point. There's Jordan Whitehead is the starting strong safety, and he's been much better this year than he was his first year with the team. His biggest issue though is missed tackles. He likes to lay the hammer, and like sometimes guys just bounce off him. Like he's always going for the big play, and whether it's in the run or the pass, like he'll go for the big hit and not wrap up. So missed tackles could be a little bit of a problem. And they're starting undrafted rookie free agent from last year and Tony Adams at free safety, and he's been banged up a little bit. So they've played Ashton Davis, who's more of a special teamer, and a lot of Adrian Amos, who's a veteran that's bounced around the league a little bit. But missed tackles could be a little bit of a problem from their perspective. And we see it get mixed in with the linebackers and corners, like as a negative for Sauce. He's missed a lot of tackles so far this year. That's been a slight issue with him, but I would say the safety duo might be their biggest weakness.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, because on paper, you guys look terrific on defense. I won't lie, I haven't gone back to watch a lot of Jets games or really dissect it. So interesting. Thank you for telling me, man.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And before the year started, I might have given you linebacker, but Quincy Williams is a linebacker who's really emerged for this team. He's just an absolute tackling machine. And pairing him with CJ Mosley, like Mosley is an older player now. He looks like he's lost a little bit of a step to his game, but he's so smart. The football IQ makes up for it a little bit, but with the emergence of Quincy Williams, that's become a really nice duo in the middle of the field as well.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, as I think there's a lot of the Broncos offense has been so bad for so many years now. It's been terrible. Ever since Peyton Manning left, it's been terrible for Broncos country trying to figure out this offense. This is the first year in a long time where we're kind of feeling confident in it and we're feeling good. And this is, I would say, definitely their biggest matchup here. So I would say that the most Broncos fans would be saying the matchup is just strictly offense versus defense. We're not even paying attention to our defense anymore. That's out the window. We know what that's all about. I'm trying to figure out how good this offense really is. How good is the Russell Wilson and Sean Payton pairing? Because is that something I want to roll with going into the future? Russell Wilson's getting up there in age. It's just interesting.
No, absolutely. And this is my favorite comment so far. I have to pop this up here. John chimes in and says, "This guy seems really nice. I still hope it's a bloodbath."
Shout out to John. I get it. Hey, that's reciprocated. Like I said, we don't like Nathaniel Hackett. We don't like a lot of what's going on over there. There's a lot of Broncos fans are kind of with how the team looks. We're a little I don't know, sensitive to the Sauce Gardner Patrick Surtain debate right now. We're taking that one personal too.
I totally get it. And then my guy Jigaman Porto chimes in and says, "We can be nice to Joey, but no love for the Broncos," which seems to be the theme in this one. Greg chimes in with a prediction. He says Russell will be sacked 5 times. You talked about the offensive line in general being a little bit better this year, but Russell's a quarterback, even going back to Seattle days, that seemed to get sacked a lot. Is this like a concern for this game going up against specifically like this Jets defensive line? Are you concerned about sacks being a potential problem?
Without question, yes. Russ is a quarterback. In his heyday, Russ was a magician in the pocket. Who doesn't remember that? That was probably his best attribute, was he could extend plays like nobody else in Seattle. And because of that, you take sacks as well. When you're holding to the ball for so long, you're going to get the positives and negatives with that. Now we're looking at a Broncos version of Russell Wilson, where is he as athletic as he used to be? Probably not. So it's imperative to the team that he's getting the ball out faster. He's not trying to do all this make a play, backyard football stuff all the time. Has it worked out in the prior weeks? Yes, especially in the red zone, I'd say. It feels like all the Broncos touchdowns in the red zone have come off a scramble drill. Russ finding somebody in the corner of the end zone. But without question, yeah, Russ does take sacks, and it sets the offense back big when he does, and he does it every single year. So, yeah, that should be expected, that Russ will be sacked a few times.
Rico chimes in and says, is Vance Joseph really the only reason for the Broncos defense problems? I don't understand how they were so elite last year and how they've been so bad this year. You mentioned like a lot of turnover as well on the defensive side of the ball is a problem too.
Yeah, even going back to last year, I'd say, for those that don't remember, Jairo Evero was our defensive coordinator, and he had this Broncos defense cooking. Now, the Broncos ended up moving Bradley Chubb to the Miami Dolphins at the trade deadline. And if you look, the Broncos were the number one defense before the Bradley Chubb trade, around 25 after the Bradley Chubb trade. And it kind of leveled its way out to being where it looked like the Broncos were really good on defense. But by the end of the year, they weren't actually a very good defense. And then you start to lose players on top of that. You have a defensive coordinator that comes in, and it doesn't really feel like he knows what he's doing. That's how you end up having a terrible, terrible, terrible defense.
Yeah, it seems like that Chubb trade was an interesting one, and I do think that played a big time impact on it. How about this one from NJ Rocket? What's the Broncos fans feeling on Sean Payton besides the knowledge he's always been a scumbag, notwithstanding?
Yeah, so I think fans have a little more faith in him than media. He's kind of limiting media's ability to get inside and figure things out inside the Broncos big time. And, local media is holding a little bit of a grudge against Sean Payton. But I'd say fans are just happy to see, like, he was brought in here to work out Russell Wilson. A lot of us thought that was not possible. You can't make Russ work after last year. It was that bad. And he comes in, and Russell Wilson looks a lot better. So I think fans are kind of on Sean Payton's side right now. I would also say, yeah, he's not the nicest in the pressers.
He hasn't always made it the easiest. Another one chime in. If DJ Reed doesn't play, this game changes drastically. So Jets corner 2, DJ Reed, who's very good in his own right. I saw Gardner gets a ton of the love, and it's understandably so. But DJ Reed's probably a top 15 corner in the NFL as well. That I could see this being a problem, not just because DJ Reed, but their backup who would come in, Brandon Eccles, will be out in this game. So kind of hoping that DJ Reed gets out of concussion protocol and plays, because I think this is a fair thing to call out. That means they probably have to go to Bryce Hall, who's struggled a little bit.
Right. Bryce Hall. I remember him coming out of the draft. A lot of hype there.
I liked Bryce Hall, and he was pretty good his first 2 years, actually. He started for a really bad Jets team, and then they started to get good. And ironically, he has not taken the cornerback 4 role very well.
Okay, well, interesting. That is a big one. If he doesn't play, you guys are down 2 corners. That's a big deal.
Absolutely. So Dave the Dude chimes in. So maybe Broncos positivity here. Jets are 2-6 in their last 8 playing in Denver, 1-2 in their last 3, and have been shut out twice. Any change to how you feel going into this game on Sunday?
I don't know. I do think I'm going to say, I don't know if this changes my opinion. I think it's going to be a pretty close game. I do. I think Sean Payton's going to have some tricks up his sleeve, just like I think Nathaniel Hackett might for this game.
Okay.
One thing that's been noticed is there's this group called the Quarterback Collective, and all these coaches Nathaniel Hackett comes off the Shanahan tree, and everyone is represented by the same agent who runs the Quarterback Collective. And he's been on Twitter talking crazy about Sean Payton. so I think Sean Payton has a little point to prove here, because Saleh is another one of them. He falls under that tree. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I like that. Jonathan Lee chimes in and goes, if Hackett doesn't put Mecole Hardman on a jet sweep, I'm going to lose it. So again, as you mentioned, and I don't expect you to watch a ton of Jets football, but one of the biggest issues Jet fans have had with their offenses in the offseason, they go out, they sign Mecole Hardman from the Chiefs. He's a speedy wide receiver, and they haven't used him like at all. The only time he's seen the field was in garbage time against the Dallas Cowboys. Snaps were way down. And it seems like that would be an obvious way to get him on the field and just get the ball in his hands.
Yeah.
The speedy receiver like that seems like it could be an issue for this Broncos secondary, I would think.
Yeah, totally. So are you guys playing Randall Cobb a lot? Is that who's in there?
Yeah, Randall Cobb.
Wow.
So not this past week, 2 weeks ago, Randall Cobb against the Patriots, the Jets offense put up 10 points, by the way. And Randall Cobb played 73% of offensive snaps. Mecole Hardman played 3%. So that was a point of contention just a couple weeks ago.
I'm sure it is, man. I would probably want Mecole Hardman starting or playing over Randall Cobb as well. Yeah, I understand where Jets fans are coming from on that one.
Absolutely. So Dominic wants to know, who is the Broncos' X factor in this game?
I would say somebody you guys watch out for is Javonte Williams. While he is a really great back, I don't know if he exactly looks the same or looks as explosive as like a Breece Hall does coming off of a big injury. They both had these big injuries. Jaleel McLaughlin, an undrafted free agent, came in last week, and he really balled out. He looks really good. Is he ever going to go in there and pass protect for you or something like that? No. But I do think he's the most talented of the Broncos running backs, or with the ball in his hands, he looks like he's the most talented. So I think that's somebody to circle. If the Broncos are going to have a big rushing game, I think that Jaleel McLaughlin's going to take up about 60% of that.
Yeah, I was watching with the Jets on Sunday Night Football. I was on Red Zone pretty much all day, and I was like, who is this kid? Like, he seems like really explosive. And, obviously, Javante's the bigger name there, but I'm with you. I think there's something to his game. That is definitely someone that I'd be keeping an eye out for.
Yeah. That's the main. Oh, and Marvin Mims. That's the other one, the rookie. Marvin Mims is the wide receiver you guys should be watching out for. The Broncos haven't been a lot like Mecole Hardman. He's been getting his snaps sparingly, but he catches a big ball downfield almost every single game this year, or a big return, or both. He is the difference maker on this offense, and that's somebody that Jets fans should, without question, keep an eye out for. If he's in the game, it's a deep ball's coming.
There we go. All right, so something to keep an eye on, especially if Reed's out. All right, that's something that we will keep an eye on. Vinster wants to know, should I take the Jets in my survivor pool? I'll pitch that one to you first. Are you picking against your own team in this one?
I'm not going to pick against my own team here. I have in almost every other game. The only issue I'm not in this one is only because they're getting some players back. I can't understate how much, or overstate how much Justin Simmons means to this defense. He's been here for years and years and years. He was drafted by the Broncos. He's been one of the better safeties in football since he came in the league, and him being back is going to be massive all on its own. So you're going to get a little more fight out of this defense than you would have in the past.
Yeah, I would avoid it. I think the Jets, and we'll get into final predictions at the end here. I don't know if we've taken the Dolphins yet, but I love the Dolphins in a bounce back spot against the Giants this week, who just look absolutely awful. So I think that's the direction that I would go in Survivor. I hate picking my own team in Survivor pools like that. Then I'm doubly mad. I'm mad that I got knocked out, and I'm mad my team lost. So I would avoid taking the Jets if you could.
Yeah, don't bet on your own games, guys. Too much emotion.
And as Jay Rocket says, too much variance on offense to rely on in a Survivor. I'm with you there. So I guess we'll go here. Where do you think this game plays out? Do you think it's gets into a little bit of a higher scoring game, or do you see it like a lower scoring one, like the last time these two teams played last year?
I think it's going to kind of have to. If I think the Broncos are going to win, I think it's going to have to be kind of a higher scoring game. Because I don't think I am not until the Broncos defense shows me they could have more fight this week, like I said. But until they really show me that they're going to actually put their foot down on anything, it's hard for me to imagine a Broncos game where they aren't putting up points if they come across with a win. So I'm going to say a higher scoring game this week. Like I said earlier, Justin Fields, 335 passing yards. For my money, I think Justin Fields is probably the worst passing quarterback in the NFL right now. So it's Zach Wilson could have a really good game. The Jets offense could have a really good game. I guess if you guys come out and run the ball a lot, that could change the score, roll the clock down, stuff like that. But it's going to have to be a higher scoring game if the Broncos want to win.
Yeah, I would agree. If the Jets lose this game, I think it would be because the defense didn't show up for some reason. And that's not a discredit on the Broncos offense. Like we have to give them their the Broncos offense has been pretty solid this year, and they do have weapons. You mentioned Mims as a deep threat, and if they do find Jerry Jeudy over the middle of the field, he can do some damage. And they have explosive plays on at the running back spot. So I'm with you there. I do think it's closer than some people may expect it to be. And I would expect the Jets offense, who normally struggles, to have some success this week. Golden Robert chimes in with the super chat. Thank you so much for the support. Says, hey, Matt, Zach just needs to play run and shoot offense. New York Jets versus Kansas City. One word, coercion. All right. So how do you think a run and shoot offense would work against this Broncos defense? To me, I feel like that's kind of the perfect recipe of trying to get Zach in a rhythm here.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that would be play right in the Broncos' hands a little bit. Like I said earlier, the Broncos edge rushers, they aren't. Hey man, put Zach Wilson in the run and shoot offense. That's what I'll say. I just want that. That's what I want. Don't go under center and run up a bunch of the football, please, Jets.
I love that. So Oreo says, if the Broncos end up with a top 5 pick, are they in rebuild mode?
Broncos end up with the top 5 pick. I have a hard time believing that Sean Payton, at his age, especially how he got out of New Orleans, right? He didn't want to go through that rebuild, that he's ever really going to do that. The Broncos might look like they're rebuilding. They might be trading away players, but what's really happening is they're going to go right back into this next season and try to build a competitive roster. I don't think they're going to go in rebuild mode. Hopefully, if a quarterback's available at some point, you draft somebody to develop under Russell Wilson. But if I were a betting man, I'd say that no, they're probably not going to go into rebuilding mode.
Right now, they have the 4th pick in the draft. I guess where you had expectation wise the rest of the year. Like, do you see it continuing to be like this is going to be a team that ends up with a top 5 pick, or do you think there's improvement down the line?
I think they're going to probably end up with the top 5 pick. I think they're probably, like I said, going to move both Sutton and or Jeudy at wide receiver by the trade deadline. You already saw Randy Gregory get cut, right? So I think right now is kind of the rebuild window. I don't think you're really going to see the Broncos go into the offseason getting rid of players. It's going to happen in season. They're going to get their top 5 pick and then try to run it right back, try to build a competitive roster for the next season. Is that smart? I don't know. I think that's what's going to happen, though.
Are you team take a quarterback if you're up that high, or you just are saying you don't think they will?
I am team take a quarterback. That's what I would want to do. I mean, Russell Wilson's 34 years old. The Broncos defense is terrible. I don't think that this team is going to be a Super Bowl team within the next 3 years of the Russell Wilson window. That's such a small period, and the Broncos team just isn't talented enough. They're not 1 or 2 pieces away. They have to build almost an entirely new defense. So I do think I would take a quarterback. I would probably run Russell Wilson back this next year. I wouldn't cut him, but I would be developing a quarterback under him.
Yeah, that seems to make sense. And the style of play that Russell Wilson plays, like, I don't know if he's a quarterback that lasts to 40. Like exactly. At that point, at 34 years old, you're getting the last couple years remaining out of this guy. Like I said, I don't know if he's going another 6 years after this.
I totally agree. I mean, like I said earlier, I don't think this Broncos Russell Wilson is even close to the Seahawks Russell Wilson. There has been a decline in athleticism. You're not seeing all of that crazy backyard football stuff that made him so special in Seattle.
There we go. All right, I'll put you on the spot. We'll do final predictions and give me a score prediction for this game.
Okay. I'll go I'm going to go 31-28 Broncos. I think we're going to put up some points. Let's do it.
Okay. I like that. That'd be entertaining. I want the Jets to win because I need their season to get back on track here and looking forward with the Eagles before the bye. I don't love that. I don't want to go 1-5 into the bye. So I'm hoping the Jets come out with the win, but I do think there's a chance that this game is closer than some are expecting. And hey, I mean, technically the Broncos are favored by 2 points right now. So I guess people are expecting them to win.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I didn't know they were favored by 2 points. That's interesting. I would go into this game thinking the Jets were for sure.
We'll see. So I think the Jets win, but maybe a tighter game than some are expecting. Joey, I appreciate you joining me today. Where can people find their stuff if they want to find your stuff if they want to follow along with you?
Yeah, no, everyone, please, if your guys are interested, this next week we're gonna have like some film breakdowns on the YouTube channel. That's Let's Talk Broncos. See some Jet stuff. What you guys did bad, what you guys did good versus the Broncos. And then if you guys want to follow me on Twitter, where I'm tweeting a lot about NFL draft, college football. I love college football and the Broncos. That's at JR Drafts on Twitter.
Love it. For Joey, I'm Matt O'Leary. We'll talk to you guys next time.